Welcome into another edition of the Old North State Sports Show. Folks, we are not talking Panthers today. We got a few other sports topics to get into, and why don't we kick it off with the Four Nations tournament? My gosh, what a successful event. And I know there's probably a lot of folks that you may or may not have listened to that have talked about this event, but I got to tell you, as a very casual fan of the NHL. And when I say casual, I'll watch the Hurricanes once they get into the playoffs. Carolina Hurricanes, because I'm in Carolina. I do get involved when that happens. We like to see them go on runs. My brother played hockey growing up, so of course I got the ties to the hockey team that way. And so for me, that's where I watch it. Now, if it's on during the year and the season, I may get into it. But you want to talk about a successful event. And this thing smashed ratings. You think about the promo, which really wasn't a lot of promo going into this. You talk about the replacement for the All-Star game this year, having this. The odds of them being able to do this every year, slim. Like, we know this, I don't know what the rotation is going to be, but I feel like this event is exactly what is right in the NHL and how they are leading the charge on putting an event like this together. You could cross compare it very easily to the NBA. And I listen to the talking heads on the NBA. And to be honest, I am not an NBA guy. And I think part of that, and not because I don't like the NBA, I'll tune in, but my fandom and viewership and intrigue in following the NBA, one, you got to be honest, the Charlotte Hornets aren't much to talk about. And like, I don't really follow them that well, keep up with the news and everything that's happening in trades or not trades that are going down. But in general, my fandom 3 or 4 years ago with the NBA was big. I followed the Golden State Warriors, LeBron, whatever was going on at the time, the super teams. And I would watch. I'd watch games during the year because I felt like I should. And viewership in general down across the entire NBA. Like, what is going on there? And you talk about an all-star game. You look at the entire, like, I know I'm singling out the NBA, but I think that's because you had their all-star event going on. You had Chris Paul and whoever was it Wembanyama trying to finagle their way out of the Skills Challenge and cheat. And like, it's unwatchable. It really is. And then there's no effort. I think that's the biggest thing. And like, you could throw the NFL in there as well. The effort level between NHL and what they did, because this meant nothing, meant absolutely nothing. Sure, it's for bragging rights, but I tweeted there was a good chance that these guys should have just gone out there, done whatever they wanted. They could have chosen like, hey, we're going to take this casual. We'll put up 7-8 goals apiece. We'll take it easy on each other. You have guys getting hurt. You have guys that potentially could miss the rest of the season for their NHL teams because they wanted to win so badly. And I know there's a difference in playing for your country and the pride that comes with that. But the event itself, the players had to care. And I see people tweeting out like, this has to do with coaching. This has to do with leadership. It really just has to do with the players wanting to give a crap about putting out their performance, because you can go back and watch the All-Star games from the 90s in the NBA, the early 2000s, the Kobe years, the Michael Jordan years. People cared and they wanted to play. Same thing with the Pro Bowl. Now, it might not have been as much. I would honestly, as you think about where the Pro Bowl is today, which is a flag football game and events, it would be like the purpose of the Pro Bowl is seeing the best players play against each other and put forth effort. I understand people are concerned about injuries and this and this and this, but it would be nice to see the best of the best competing against each other competitively. I know it's never going to happen with the NFL. Like, they're just moving away from it. NBA has no excuse, in my opinion, to not be able to put forth the effort. But it's just, for me, when I know that, hey, we're going to go out and this guy's going to sit out this week or this week, viewership's not there. But hats off to the NHL for figuring this out. Hats off to the players. Well run. And I mean, Major League Baseball kind of in that realm as well. Like, there's not really a way to kind of take it off when you talk about baseball. I know it is to a certain extent. But in general, with the All-Star game, I just don't know how many people would be tuning in to something like this. So most watched, and I think it was like 9.2, a little over 9.2 million viewers. most watched NHL hockey game. Like, put that into perspective. And then you throw in Canada's viewership as well, which of course is a big part of this. And I think over 16, it's insane. And you start comparing that, especially when it's one game and it's an exhibition game. Like, that alone, it was fantastic. It was also fun, a really good matchup. I didn't watch. I saw the highlights of the first time USA and Canada played. I watched the entire game Thursday night. I had to think about when it was. Stayed up, saw it go to overtime. USA had a lot of good shots and opportunities to score. They didn't get through, but it captivated us. And maybe it is the national pride, but I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited about the Olympics in 2026, the Winter Olympics, that is. And I mean, we got a young team, or a team that should be competitive to win a gold medal. And I hope people tune in. You didn't have Russia involved. Maybe eventually things, come around and we're able to kind of sort all this stuff out and you bring them in. I like it. And the NHL figured something out. I think they struck gold. The biggest thing is the marketing. And I think a lot of people talked about this, that there wasn't a lot of marketing. It kind of just happened. It was natural, organic growth. Once people saw the effort that the players were going to put into this event, things just took off. So hats off to the NHL, hats off to the players, everyone involved for putting together really what was a fantastic week of what was supposed to be kind of relaxation. So I'll take it all day. Now, speaking of relaxation and expansion and playoffs and viewership, got a lot to digest in the world of college football with a lot of news happening over the past week. And I personally have not been able to give my opinions and thoughts on some of the updates. And the biggest updates coming out of this right now for fans that are dialed in and know what's happening is talks of expansion in the playoff, which we knew this was going to come, whether it's 14 or 16 teams. That seems to be the metric right now. So you have expansion on the horizon. You have seeding conversations. So instead of doing this weird thing where we reward the conference champions, the top 4 conference champions with the auto buys, they want to go ahead and take the actual rankings that are produced and use that to create your seeding. Makes sense. Instead of trying to, confuse and complicate this thing, I'm actually all for expansion, and I'm also for this seeding correctly based off of where you finish. The other curveball in this entire thing is talks about the number of bids and auto bids that conferences are going to get. And this is probably the biggest news. And to be honest, I feel like some people are a little bit upset if you're not in Big Ten or SEC country. But as I have digested this as an ACC guy, y'all guys know that, I think this is the perfect solution for the current state. We have to acknowledge, as fans of college football, that right now the top heavy programs and leagues, and of all college football, it's the SEC and the Big Ten. However you want to divide it, those are the premier conferences. ACC doing all they can to put forth a Clemson, a Florida State, a SMU this past year, but when hopefully UNC in years to come, we'll see. But when you talk about the perennial powers and throw Big 12 in there because they're also in this, what this is going to do is put the power of the conference back in the realm of deciding. It's going to remove all this crap that we have going on with the committee, this ranking over this ranking, this stat over this stat. It's going to eliminate it, folks. And that is a good thing. And if you're a fan of college football, this is what you should want, because now what you're talking about is, we haven't really said, 4 auto bids for the SEC, 4 auto bids for the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12. So that gets you what, at 8, 10, 12. Then you would have 4 additional, I believe, at large, which is not 4 at large. You have the group of 5. What would be Notre Dame if they're in there? So that would leave 2 spots if we're going up to 14-ish, 14 to 16. So it would leave a few spots open there, 2 to 4, depends on how far they take this. But I am for this, and here's the reason. So there's a lot of talks about how is this going to work, and what you're essentially going to be doing is taking what was your conference championship weekend, which still will exist, and creating a new format. And so the ACC actually was already thinking about this prior to all this news coming out. And what they are planning to do, or the ACC was planning to do, is on conference championship weekend or the week before, and then playing into the conference championship, it's having a mini tournament. So ACC was looking at number 1 versus number 4, number 2 versus 3. And then from there, this was before we were talking about how many bids each conference was going to get. But then you'd have, an ability to really play in within your conference to get in. And now with this expansion, this is going to help that. And what it does, like I said, is it eliminates picking this one over this one. And I know some fans may be upset that they get 4 bids here and 4 bids here. The ACC gets 2. Let's be honest. And I went back and looked as I was doing this. Just look at the final standings for like the last, 10, 15 years. Realistically, there's been maybe 2 to 3 ACC teams in the mix. If you're the ACC, you got 3 good football teams. Guess what? Your top 2, and then if your third is good enough, they should be able to get in on the back end as an at-large bid if they're one of the best. But what I like, again, is the ability to eliminate the thinking. Hey, they're much better over here at this particular thing. It's strength of schedule versus strength of record, and this is how we're going to seed them, the head-to-head stuff. You put the conference, it really does align with the NFL. It's not going to be perfect. It's not a perfect model, but it's a better model, because then, however the SEC decides, I think this is probably the one thing I don't know that I'm waiting to see is, does the SEC get to pick their 4? Meaning, are there going to be constraints on how those spots are handled? Because I think that's where you could kind of get into some rough edges. So let's say the SEC's who's exploring either like a 1 versus 2, so both of those automatically get in, and then you're 3 and 6, 4 and 5. If you look at some of those scenarios, I'm curious how they handle the back end. So what happens if you are a 3 seed and you lose to a 6 seed, and the 6 seed gets in over you? Let's say it's just kind of a fluke of a game, and maybe you beat them earlier in the year. There's all those things that play into this that I'm curious, like, how does this land? And does the conference, because you're not going to play 2 or 3 games, you really have 1 weekend to have this playoff to get into the playoffs. The only thing I'll say about this entire thing, and I know I'm pretty positive on where it's going, is what does it do for viewership? I think it does good things to an extent, gets more eyeballs, but does it take away? And I don't know. I mean, you're going to have to expand with the SEC to 9 games. Conference ACC should as well. I know the Big 10, Big 12 are already there, but I do think you've got to figure that part out, because that's a big piece of this is the conference schedule. It's going to come with it, the out of conference schedule and what that means. But it does put you in a position to where if you lose that non-conference game against a really good opponent, it wouldn't necessarily knock you out of the race as long as you're doing well within the conference. And so maybe we do see some of these more marquee matchups, which is what people want. People don't want to see Ole Miss versus Tulane. That's not a good excuse or example, but John St. Mary's of Thomas School versus Alabama. We want to see the primetime Alabama, Florida State, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, Clemson, South Carolina. We want to see those type of games in the out-of-conference schedule. So lots to be said. I just don't know. The other thing with this is, like, what does the viewership look like? Do people just get tired? Because that's a lot of football. I don't know how they space it out. Of course, media rights, that's another thing. You think about all the games now you could have on the weekend slate for the conference tournaments. You used to have the 1 game for each conference. Play in, and all this stuff's going to kind of change that, give more TV rights, more deals, all that. No idea how that part would play out. But anyways, man, a lot of talking today around college football. I think that's going to do it for today's show. So anyways, folks, this is Carolina Dad. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all have a good one.